The pen was heavier than it had any right to be. I remember the way the fluorescent light hummed above the detective's desk. That flat, indifferent buzzing that belongs only to government buildings and places where lives are officially changed. A single sheet of paper lay in front of me. A name was printed at the top, hers, and at the bottom a line. A line that had taken me 7 years, 4 lawyers, 2 countries, and more tears than I had any business crying to reach. My hand didn't shake. That surprised me. I had imagined this moment so many times, sobbing, trembling, collapsing with relief. But when it finally came, I was very, very still. She's not your kind. She had hissed those words at me across a holiday dinner table 13 years before. Said it the way people say things they've believed for a long time and finally stopped pretending otherwise. Her eyes didn't flinch. Her wine glass didn't even lower. She just looked at me, looked through me, and decided out loud that I, Renée Washington, was not a woman worth accounting for. I was 26. I was her son's wife. I was the mother of her granddaughter. And I was, according to Catherine, not her kind. What kind was that exactly? The kind that fights back? The kind that keeps records? The kind that one quiet Tuesday morning in a detective's office that smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet, picks up a pen and writes her name on a warrant for her arrest? Because here is what she never understood. What none of them understood. You can take everything from a woman, her child, her years, her sanity nearly, but you cannot take her patience, and patience, it turns out, is a weapon no one sees coming. I pressed the pen to the paper, and I signed. My name is Renée Washington, and I need you to understand what I was to her. The wrong woman from the wrong neighborhood with the wrong last name and the wrong way of carrying myself. I had grown up working. My mother cleaned office buildings on the night shift. My father drove long-haul trucks 3 weeks out of every 4. I had put myself through a nursing program on my own and married her son, Douglas Pierce, at 24. In a ceremony she attended in a dress that cost more than my rent. She was civil to my face. That was its own kind of violence, the civility, because what it meant was that everything happening to me was deniable. The way she spoke over me at dinner, the way she subtly redirected conversations about our daughter so that her preferences, her methods, her vision of who this child should become crowded out everything I said. The way she called Douglas 4 times a week, and I was never quite sure what those conversations contained, only that afterward he would look at me with a slightly different quality of distance. My daughter's name is Amara. She had my eyes and her father's laugh, and she was, from the first moment, the kind of child who makes you understand why people believe in things they cannot prove. She was 4 years old when the world arranged itself into a before and an after. The divorce had been underway for 6 weeks. Contentious, ugly. The way divorces are when one family has money and a lawyer they've used before, and the other has a court-appointed advocate and a heart full of terrified love. Amara was with Douglas for a scheduled weekend visit. Sunday came. Then Sunday evening. Then the phone calls I made began going to voicemail. Then the voicemail inbox filled. By Monday morning, I knew, in the way that mothers know things before the facts confirmed them, that my daughter was not coming home. The police were sympathetic. The word they used, the one that lodged itself in me like a splinter, was custody dispute. As if what had happened was a misunderstanding, as if a 4-year-old girl had simply been misplaced, like a set of keys. I need you to understand something about how the law treats a Black mother without money.
It treats her like a formality, like a box to check on the way to a conclusion that was already written. The Pierce family had a lawyer who specialized in international family law, a man with a corner office in a city I had never visited, who filed motions with the fluency of someone for whom courts were simply another room in a house he owned. They moved Amara abroad within 8 weeks. A legal gray zone, their lawyer argued. Not abduction, relocation, contested relocation, pending resolution. My daughter was 4 years old, somewhere on the other side of the world, and the law had a phrase for it that made it sound like a spreadsheet error. Amara called me once, just once in those early years. She had gotten hold of a phone somehow, and her voice, when I answered, was very small and very careful, as if she were speaking from inside a room where someone might be listening. I reported it. I filed the call as evidence. I was told it demonstrated that my daughter was able to communicate, that it was in fact reassuring. Meanwhile, Catherine, the architect of all of it, because make no mistake, she was the one who drew the blueprint, was photographed at charity galas. She gave a donation to a children's hospital. There is a plaque with her name on it in a lobby somewhere. A woman who helped steal a child from her mother, and her name is on a plaque. She sent me a card on what would have been Amara's 6th birthday. A card, no return address, postmarked from a country I couldn't afford to fly to. Inside, in her handwriting, 3 words: she is flourishing. She wanted me to know she had won. She wanted me to feel it. She wanted me to understand that women like her kind, do not lose. I put the card in a folder. I labeled the folder with a date. I had 14 of them by the time it was over. Year 5, I stopped crying in the way I had been crying. Something shifted. Grief, when it runs long enough, gets very quiet, very precise. I went back to school, nights, weekends, healthcare administration. I needed a better income, and I needed something to keep my mind from eating itself. But I also needed to understand systems, how they work, how they fail, how information moves through them, and where it stops. I found a woman online, a forum for parents of internationally abducted children, moderated at odd hours by someone who signed her posts only as V. She had been through something similar. She had eventually found a path. We talked for months before she trusted me enough to give me a name. A private investigator in Europe who had worked these cases before, who had contacts, who understood the way money and legal structures could be used as both a cage and carefully as a key. I saved for 8 months. The investigator's name was Marcus. He was methodical in the way that makes you realize most people are improvising. He didn't promise me anything. He said, "Tell me everything you know." Every document, every date, every name. I sent him the folder, all 14 items. 6 weeks later, he sent me 3 words. I found her. She was 11. She had been enrolled in a private school under a different surname, her grandmother's name, hyphenated, as if she'd been absorbed into another lineage by paperwork. She was in the school choir. She liked mathematics. There was a photograph taken from a distance, and her eyes were still mine. Then came the real work, the quiet, painstaking kind. A contact at an embassy, a detail in the original custody filing that had been incorrectly translated, a financial record subpoenaed through a civil case Marcus built piece by piece, like a man assembling a very small, very specific bomb. Catherine's name everywhere, her fingerprints on every transaction, every decision, every motion filed in that other country. She had directed it all. Douglas had been the face. Catherine had been the spine. When the case was finally referred to international prosecutors, I was asked to provide documentation. I sent them the folder, all 17 items by then. They said they had rarely seen a private citizen maintain records this meticulously. I said I had nowhere else to put my love. She was in the room when they brought her in. I was behind a one-way mirror. Standard procedure, they said. I didn't have to be there. I chose to be. Catherine looked smaller than I remembered. Older, of course. We all were. But it was more than that. The architecture of her certainty had come apart. She sat in that chair with the practiced composure of a woman who has spent a lifetime performing dignity, and underneath it I could see, just barely in the set of her jaw, the first fracture of someone who has finally run out of moves. A detective placed the warrant on the desk and asked her to confirm her identity. She did. Her voice was even. I will give her that. Then she looked up, not at the detective, but at the mirror. She couldn't see me, but she knew. The way people who have spent years trying to erase someone always know when that someone is still there. Not her kind. I, Renée Washington, had never been her kind, and it had saved my life. Because her kind does not survive like this. Her kind assumes the game is already won. Amara was 11 when I found her, and 12 by the time the legal process completed its final grinding turn and she came home to me. She is 18 now. She is enrolled in university. She studies, I smile every time I say this, international law. She does not speak about those years often. We have a therapist we trust. And we have learned the difference between the stories we owe the world and the ones that belong only to us. This one, this telling, is one I offer not because I owe anyone my pain, but because somewhere right now there is a woman sitting in a silence that feels permanent. A Black woman who has been told in 1,000 different languages by 1,000 different systems that she is not the right kind. I want her to know the pen will come. It always comes. You only have to be patient enough, precise enough, relentless enough to still be standing when it arrives. I signed my name, Renée Washington, in full. I pressed the cap back onto the pen. I set it down on the desk with the particular gentleness of a woman who has finally put something heavy to rest. Then I walked out into the light